You could be forgiven for thinking that all I have to do is get on a plane, spend enough time overseas, and I'm automatically going to be outside of Australia's tax system. But unfortunately, that is not how it works. Every year I see many Australians, I talk to many Australians who thought they had successfully exited Australia's tax system, only to find out years later that the ATO had a very different view of things. So in this video, I want to explain, is it actually legal to leave Australia's tax system? How does Australian tax residency work? And what are some of the biggest mistakes that Australians make when they are moving overseas? So let's get into it. First thing, is it actually legal to leave Australia's tax system and not pay tax in Australia anymore? The answer is yes. There is absolutely nothing illegal about ceasing tax residency in Australia and not paying taxes in Australia if your circumstances genuinely support that. And why would you want to do that? Well, as an Australian tax resident, you are taxed on your worldwide income. But if you become a non-resident for tax purposes, the rules around taxation change substantially. If you cease tax residency, you are only taxed on Australian sourced income. And it's not tax evasion or some kind of loophole, it's just the rules. So the question isn't really, can I leave the Australian tax system? The answer is yes. The real question you need to be asking is, have I genuinely ceased tax residency in Australia? And this is where things can get a bit complicated. Some people think if I automatically spend 183 days overseas, I'm not a resident of Australia anymore, or if I do not spend 183 days in Australia, I'm not a tax resident anymore. This is just not the case. Australia's tax residency rules aren't just based on one simple number. The ATO will look at a broad range of factors. Things like, where is your permanent home? What is your intention? Are you displaying clear intent in moving overseas? What are your family ties like in Australia? Do you have business interests here? Do you have assets here? What are your lifestyle arrangements and what is your pattern of living? Of course, time in the country is important, but it's not the only thing that the ATO will look at. It's possible to remain overseas for multiple years and still be a tax resident of Australia. At the same time, it's certainly possible to make a very quick exit as well if you plan correctly, you structure correctly, and your circumstances support this. So what actually changes when you become a non-resident for tax purposes in Australia? Well, assuming you've genuinely become a non-tax resident, you've done all the right things, you've informed the ATO, you're off. What changes? Well, foreign income may no longer be taxable in Australia. Different tax rates are going to apply on your Australian sourced income. You're going to be on the non-resident tax rates now, which means for a lot of income types, you'll be taxed on 30% from the first dollar. But that doesn't necessarily apply to all income types. Certain CGT tax rules are going to change as well. There may be deemed disposal issues around your assets. This is the exit tax that you may have heard of. How are your investments held? Do you own them in your name? Are they in a company? Are they in the trust? Are they in a self-managed super fund? This is the area where if you make a mistake or if the ATO takes a different view to you on your residency, it can become very costly. Obviously, the more assets you have at play, the higher your income, the bigger the risk if you get it wrong. So what have you owned? What assets do you have in Australia? Do you have Australian property? A lot of people choose to sell property, but you don't have to. There can be legitimate reasons for holding onto property as well. And depending on the country that you have now moved to, what is the tax treaty in place between Australia and this country, and how does that affect your taxation? So as you can see, there's a lot of moving parts here and a lot of traps if you're not careful. This is why you have to be careful about what you see and hear on social media. People are going to say all kinds of things online. Some of it will be right, some of it will be way off as well. Or you might just be taking it out of context. Everyone has a different situation. And this is why it can be dangerous to not get personalized tax advice before making an exit. Ultimately, your tax residency position will depend on the facts of your individual case. You could have two Aussies making the move overseas to the same country. One may have successfully severed ties in Australia. One may be considered still a tax resident by the tax office. This is very possible depending on the facts of each individual case. Now, if you are thinking about leaving Australia for tax purposes, you can think about it in several key stages. Number one, are you in a position to actually cease residency? What are the tax consequences of your departure? How will your investments and assets be structured after you cease residency? But it's not just about Australia. You've got to look at what are the tax rules in the country you are moving to. And of course, the tax treaty. How's that going to apply? How's that going to affect your situation? Because there can be situations where a certain type of income, which may have received concessional tax treatment in Australia, may be taxable at a higher rate in the country you're moving to. So you've got to be pretty careful there. So each stage of making an exit certainly has its risks, but because there is risk, that's also where the opportunity lies. If you do good planning, your overall tax liability can be significantly lower than it was in Australia, depending on where you move to and a lot of variables in play, of course. I'm not trying to scare you out of making a move here. It is very possible to do. You just want to make sure you do it right. Thousands of Australians do legally cease tax residency in Australia every year, and we're seeing more and more people than ever going down this route. But it's important to know that the process can be more nuanced than a lot of people may have realised. Now, if you're looking for a detailed breakdown of the issues involved with ceasing residency and becoming a non-resident for tax purposes, we created the Australian Tax Exit Kit for this purpose. In that, you're going to get a step-by-step guide of all the things you want to do before and after, checklists and so on. That's going to guide you on how to make an exit from the Australian tax system. So we've put the framework there into our product, the Australian Tax Exit Kit. That's there if you're interested in that. It could potentially save you tens of thousands of dollars. And if your circumstances are a little bit more complex, get in touch. Our firm provides personalised tax exit advice and residency reviews and can help you restructure, plan out your exit, do it the right way and keep the ATO off your back. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll leave it there. Catch you later.